December had arrived and my university went on Christmas break, leaving me alone as most of my friends scattered across the state to be with their families at home. I went looking for a part-time job to fill my holiday weeks and earn some money to relieve my financial burdens. I didn't have to look long or hard as all the shops hired Christmas help. I was quickly hired at a nearby restaurant. I have experience with waitressing and have worked part-time for years doing this, even in high school on weekends. The manager asked if I could start immediately and come in that night. I was happy to start work and arrived at 4 o'clock as he asked. The place was already busy, but that didn't bother me. I quickly saw the routine that the waitstaff followed and blended right in. The restaurant wasn't posh, and most customers were travelers off the highway. Many truckers and businessmen grabbed some home-cooked food, even if most of it was out of large cans heated on the stove in the kitchen by an ex-con. It wasn't a prominent place, and unlike most truck stops, it was dimly lit where the shadows conspired to play tricks on your senses. An ever-present noxious odor permeated the air of cleaning chemicals instead of food aromas. This was different from the place I'd typically choose to work. Still, it paid higher wages and promised greater tips than anything else. I'd earn enough money during the holiday break to avoid financial jeopardy. I consoled myself with the notion that it would only be temporary, a means to an end until college resumed. On the third night, around 11 p.m., I was alone, stationed at the front, rolling silverware and paper napkins and waiting for the last table to leave. The customers at this table were a gang of 4 unshaven bikers wearing black vests with Hell's Angels printed on the back. Their presence was intimidating. Tattoos covered their arms, and their leathery attire bore the scars of countless journeys on the open road. Half an hour dragged by that felt like forever because one of them kept looking over at me and giving me this ugly smile. It made me feel very uncomfortable. Finally, they signaled for me to bring the check, and I was relieved they would be leaving. I approached their table with the check, smiled politely to raise my tip, and thanked them for coming in. The one biker continually making eye contact with me through their dinner gave me a hideously gross grin. He took a wad of crumpled bills and smoothed them on the table. He spoke in an uneducated accent as he lifted his eyes to me. "You got any plans tonight, cutie?" I had grown accustomed to enduring the pickup lines from customers, an all too familiar occurrence in my waitressing experience. He jeered, leaning in closer, a sinister glint in his eyes. "You and me could have some fun. Thank you for coming in. I hope you enjoyed your dinner and have a good night," I replied with an icy undertone, making it abundantly clear that I was impervious to his advances. He cackled and departed through the door with the other 3, muttering something unintelligible under his breath. Not so much to me, but to his buddies. Once he was out of sight, I rushed to clear the table, wrap up my duties, and change out of my staff uniform. A swift farewell to the last kitchen worker, and I stepped out into the night. My house was just a few blocks away, so I often chose to walk to save money on Uber. And this night was a nice night to be out. The temperature was warm for December, even in Texas. I had barely strolled for 5 minutes when I was startled by a whistle that ripped through the night air, causing my heart to lurch. I pivoted to see the biker from the restaurant. He was standing across the street, gesturing for me to approach with that terrifying grin from the restaurant plastered on his face. Fear coursed through my veins that momentarily paralyzed me. Then, raw instinct grabbed hold and told me to run. My house was still 10 minutes away, and I could sense his pursuit growing nearer with each step. A whirlwind of nightmarish scenarios raced through my mind, foretelling dire consequences. Turning a corner, I broke into an all-out sprint down the dark sidewalk lit by dim streetlights. Tears welled in my eyes, drowning my vision as heavy footsteps closed the gap between us. Panic rendered me incapable of looking back, yet I could feel his dirty breath drawing ever nearer with the words, "I got ya!" Then, without warning, a vice-like grip clamped onto my shoulder, wrenching me backward. I spun around to behold the biker, his face contorted into a sinister mask of rage. He pressed a finger to his lips, his voice a menacing whisper, "Don't scream, or I'll cut ya." I steeled myself for the impending nightmare, prepared to face whatever gruesome fate lay in store. Inexplicably, an unexpected surge of bravery erupted within me. My nails dug deep into his eyes as I clawed at his face, inflicting unbearable pain. The biker howled in agony, clutching his mutilated face. Seizing this precious opportunity, I broke free and sprinted with all my might back to my apartment. Struggling to fit my key into the lock, I finally secured the door behind me. Collapsing onto the floor, I was consumed by a tumultuous blend of exhaustion and relief, tears streaming down my face. I wished my roommates were in the house, but they were on break home with their families. I was alone to fend for myself. I felt better after recounting the horrifying ordeal to my friend in a late-night call. She was equally shocked and relieved that I had narrowly escaped the violent clutches of that biker. The next day, I called the restaurant and resigned. The haunting possibility of that biker waiting for me had taken root in my mind. As I resumed college studies at the end of the holiday season, I gradually pieced myself together. I'm still haunted by the chilling nightmare of what might have occurred if I hadn't fought back that night. I was 18 years old, attending college in Athens, Ohio. It was the first time I was far from home, surrounded by unfamiliar people and taking care of myself. I was excited about the opportunity to start carving out my own way in life. My fledgling life turned sinister when I landed a job at a fast food joint near campus. After my initial training, I was assigned to work the dreaded night shift, but with my class schedule, it was okay for me. My first assignment was as a cleaning crew. It's the position where most people start in fast food. It's a job that primarily involved the less glamorous tasks of cleaning the tables and throwing out the garbage. It was not a job that required an accounting major, but I was there just for the part-time money. At first, those initial weeks on the job went by without incident. I diligently tackled my duties, and my managers grew to trust me, granting me the autonomy to handle my responsibilities without supervision. Little did I know that this newfound independence would soon turn into a nightmare. About 2 weeks into my new gig, a weird man began showing up at the restaurant a few times a week, always around 10 p.m. He'd sit in the corner, usually at a table hidden from view of the order counter and cash registers. His gaze always locked onto me with an unsettling intensity when I came in to clean the tables. He often switched seats to ensure his view of me while remaining hidden from the counter workers when I was in that section. At first, I dismissed his presence, assuming he just wanted to steer clear of my mop and bucket. I was frequently in that area since it was also where the restrooms were located and my supply closet next to them. A physical divider separated it from the rest of the restaurant, so it was even more separated, but that was very little, just out of eye view. One fateful night, while collecting supplies from the closet, I spun around to find the man blocking my exit from the supply room to the main section of the restaurant. He was grinning with a dark shadow in his eyes. I'm a tall woman standing 5'9", so I'm not usually intimidated by men. I was surprised though, and it took me off guard. I stared at him, just blinking momentarily before cautiously asking if he needed any assistance. He strangely responded by asking about my week's work schedule and my usual days off. Wishing to get back to my work, I replied that my schedule was unpredictable due to my varying assignments and if he would please excuse me. I had a mess that had to be cleaned in the restaurant, but his response sent shivers down my spine. "That's okay, baby. I'll just wait for you here every night." He returned to his table with that chilling declaration, never taking his eyes off me as he did every night. I felt even more uneasy with his presence, yet I didn't perceive the situation as dangerous, just uncomfortable. True to his word, he wasn't bluffing. He started showing up every night, always around the same time, and grew visibly upset if I hadn't worked the previous night. I finally confided in my manager, only to receive a dismissive response that he was harmless, just the typical late-night customer looking for attention. As time passed, he somehow learned my exact work schedule despite its inconsistency from week to week. He would wait for me to start my shift and disappear just before it ended. My coworkers confirmed he never showed up when I wasn't working. Things took a darker turn when he started bringing 2 friends with him who were just as weird and unsettling as he was. They'd huddle over their coffee and engage in whispered conversations. The one new creep would reach out and take my arm as I walked by, trying to coerce me into sitting with them. He was the one who always kept asking for my phone number. I always responded that the restaurant's number was online if he needed to place a phone order. One night, just before my exams, he asked about when I would take the garbage back to the compactor. My heart sank. The garbage duty involved walking out to a poorly lit, secluded corner of the parking lot where a trash compactor was discreetly placed. I'd be outside for about 15 minutes, with my back turned to the parking lot and behind a privacy fence, and the noise of the compactor masking any approaching footsteps. My manager rarely checked on me by this point, and I had gone entire shifts without any communication. Stuttering with fear, I relayed my concerns to a coworker and rushed behind the counter to inform the manager. Once again, I was told not to worry, that the man was just a little weird but friendly and not a threat. Terrified and frustrated, I asked a male coworker to accompany me while removing the garbage. I explained everything that had transpired. He advised me to stay inside, promising to handle the task alone if the man and his friends were waiting outside. And indeed they were. When my coworker returned, he told me they had been hiding in the shadows around the compactor enclosure and approached him from behind. The group was caught off guard, found me instead of you, apologized, claimed some crazy story of throwing away some cups they had or something else, and then took off in a hurry. I was both embarrassed and highly grateful for my coworker's intervention. The night manager reprimanded me for seeking assistance with the garbage duty. I pleaded with the morning manager to allow me to swap my remaining shifts with the morning workers and eventually quit. But even after quitting, they continued to haunt the restaurant every night, searching for me, never relenting in their disturbing pursuit. When I returned to the restaurant one day, my former coworkers informed me that the weird men still frequented the restaurant. They consistently inquired about me and would get agitated when told I had quit. It appeared they visited at all hours, hoping to catch me on another shift. Their obsession and menacing presence are a chilling nightmare. The night was humid in Orlando, Florida, as I prepared for my shift at a charming restaurant nestled amidst the city's vibrant lights. Tourists and locals filled the air with lively conversations, creating a bustling atmosphere. This ordinary evening would soon become a spine-chilling experience I'd never forget. I had my usual section to serve guests, providing warm smiles and excellent service. The restaurant was known for its fantastic food and family-friendly ambience. It was a perfect place for parents to bring their children for a delightful evening. One evening, I noticed an astonishing sight as I navigated through the dining room. A woman sat alone in the corner. Her striking beauty was impossible to ignore. Her raven black hair cascaded elegantly down her back, and her captivating sapphire eyes seemed to shimmer like deep pools of water. She wore a red dress that hugged her figure in all the right places, and her presence was magnetic. She was dining solo, and her gaze never left me as I approached her table. "Good evening, ma'am," I greeted her with a friendly smile, trying to shake off the discomfort her unwavering attention caused. She responded with a perfect smile, her crimson lips curving seductively. As the evening continued, her enchanting eyes remained locked on me, sending a shiver down my spine each time our gazes met. Something about her made me profoundly uneasy despite her undeniable allure. As the night progressed, a family with a young child sat at a nearby table. The little girl with pigtails and a sweet smile played with her toys. At the same time, her parents enjoyed their meal, oblivious to the enchanting woman's presence. A deep dread washed over me, and my instincts screamed that something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but I felt danger lurking nearby. I discreetly kept an eye on the captivating woman, and when I approached her table once more, she leaned in close. "I have a burning desire for a child of my own, and I've chosen that one," she whispered, indicating the innocent little girl. "Bring her to me." My heart raced, and I felt overwhelmed by fear. I couldn't comprehend her intentions, but they were undoubtedly sinister. I had to act, and I had to act quickly. I excused myself from the woman and rushed to the family's table. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I found something your daughter might enjoy," I said, doing my best to remain composed. The parents, trusting me as their waiter, nodded their agreement. I beckoned to the child, and her face lit up excitedly as we headed toward the kitchen. I explained the situation to her and urged her to stay with the kitchen staff while I contacted the authorities. Within moments, the police arrived and questioned the woman, who had become irate and irrational by then. I discovered that the woman was not what she seemed. She had an eerie fixation on the child, driven by a desire to have her own child. The police managed to restrain her, and the child's parents were shocked and grateful for my intervention. The incident left a lingering sense of unease in the days that followed. I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that I had encountered a malevolent force that night. The incident made me question the true nature of the world around us.
Subscribe.